20 black actors who suddenly disappeared for good. Hollywood told us these actors disappeared. The truth? Many were pushed out, boxed in, or quietly replaced once they refused to play the same role over and over again. From icons who challenged stereotypes to stars who aged out of an unforgiving system, these stories expose what happens when talent collides with limitation. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on black actors Hollywood stopped betting on, but audiences never forgot. If you believe some careers don't fade, they're erased, hit like, subscribe to Black Excellence Legends, and comment below. Who do you think Hollywood failed the most? Loren Tate. In the mid-1990s, Loren Tate looked destined for superstardom. His explosive performance as O-Dog in Menace to Society, 1993, instantly etched him into pop culture as one of the most terrifying and unforgettable characters of the era. The film became a landmark of urban cinema, and Hollywood rushed to offer Tate more roles. There was just one problem. They were all the same. Studio executives repeatedly pitched him as the violent young black man, gangster, criminal, menace. Tate saw the trap immediately. Rather than accepting the easy money, he made a decision that stunned the industry. He said no. Instead, Tate deliberately pivoted, choosing roles that shattered expectations. In Love Jones, 1997, he transformed into Darius Lovehall, a romantic poet whose vulnerability and intellect challenged Hollywood's narrow vision of black masculinity. The film wasn't just a cult classic, it became a cultural statement, proving audiences were hungry for more dimensional black love stories. Yet despite its success, the industry resisted the shift. Behind closed doors, Tate was labeled hard to place. Executives questioned his marketability, using coded language that masked discomfort with black actors who refused stereotypes. Still, Tate kept working, just not on Hollywood's terms. He portrayed Frankie Lyman in Why Do Fools Fall in Love, took on complex dramatic roles, and later resurfaced in television with Rescue Me and House of Lies. His most prominent return came with the Power universe, where he played Councilman Tate, a morally complex politician navigating ambition and corruption. The role earned critical praise and introduced him to a new generation, but it also confirmed a reality. Tate never disappeared because of failure. He stepped back because the system refused to meet him halfway. Loren Tate's career is a case study in quiet resistance. He didn't vanish. He chose dignity over distortion, longevity over quick checks. In an industry that rewards conformity, Tate proved that walking away can sometimes be the most powerful role of all. Tasha Arnold. For years, Tasha Arnold was one of the most reliable performers on television. Her breakout role as Pam James on Martin made her a cultural icon. Pam wasn't just the loud best friend. She was sharp, confident, and unapologetically present in every scene. Arnold's comedic timing allowed her to hold her own opposite Martin Lawrence, a rare feat that turned her into a fan favorite and helped drive the show's massive ratings throughout the 1990s. Unlike many sitcom stars, Arnold didn't disappear when Martin ended. She transitioned smoothly into film roles and later anchored Everybody Hates Chris as Rochelle Rock, the no-nonsense matriarch inspired by Chris Rock's real-life mother. The series ran for 4 successful seasons and became one of the most acclaimed black family sitcoms of the 2000s. Arnold proved she could balance humor with emotional grounding, carrying a show that resonated globally. Then, almost quietly, the calls slowed. As Arnold entered her 40s, Hollywood's interest shifted. Despite decades of proven success, she found herself offered fewer leading roles and more narrowly defined parts, mostly mothers, background characters, or short guest appearances. The issue wasn't talent or relevance, it was age, gender, and the industry's limited imagination for black women beyond a certain stage of life. Arnold never publicly framed herself as a victim. Instead, she diversified. She continued working steadily in television, voice acting, and later landed a recurring role on The Neighborhood, maintaining visibility without chasing validation. Her absence from headline roles wasn't a disappearance, it was a quiet sidelining. Tasha Arnold's story exposes a hard truth. In Hollywood, consistency doesn't guarantee security. Even when you help define an era, the industry may still decide it's done with you long before audiences are. Tatiana Ali. Tatiana Ali grew up in front of millions of viewers as Ashley Banks on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Over 6 seasons, audiences watched her evolve from the youngest Banks sibling into a socially aware young woman. Ashley wasn't just comic relief. She was the moral compass of the family, often challenging Will Smith's character and reflecting real-world issues faced by Black youth. At the height of the show's popularity, Ali had everything Hollywood promises young stars. Will Smith helped launch her music career, leading to a gold-certified single, Daydreamin', and a successful debut album. She could have easily followed the familiar path of teen stardom into romantic comedies and sitcom spin-offs. Instead, she shocked the industry. Ali chose to step away and attend Harvard University, earning a degree in African American Studies. While executives expected her to capitalize on momentum, she prioritized education and personal growth. By the time she returned, Hollywood had moved on. The roles offered were smaller, repetitive, and far removed from the layered characters she wanted to portray. Rather than force a comeback, Ali redefined success. She focused on independent projects, activism, and entrepreneurship. She co-founded initiatives supporting Black maternal health and Indigenous midwives, using her platform beyond entertainment. Acting became one part of her life, not the center. Tatiana Ali didn't disappear because she couldn't survive Hollywood. She disappeared because she refused to shrink herself to fit its expectations. Her journey challenges the idea that stepping away equals failure. Sometimes it's the clearest sign of self-respect. Flex Alexander. Flex Alexander looked like a sure thing in the early 2000s. His UPN sitcom, One on One, ran for 5 successful seasons, 2001 to 2006, and became one of the network's highest-rated shows. As Flex Washington, a former pro basketball player turned single father, Alexander helped redefine Black fatherhood on television, presenting a man who was flawed, loving, disciplined, and deeply involved in his daughter's life. At a time when positive Black male leads were rare, the show mattered. Behind the scenes, Alexander wasn't just an actor, he was vocal. He questioned scripts, pushed back against lazy stereotypes, and demanded storylines that reflected real Black families. That insistence earned him respect from audiences, but discomfort from executives. As One on One ended, he expected the usual transition: films, development deals, leading roles. Instead, the phone stopped ringing. Alexander later revealed that he was told conflicting things by Hollywood power brokers. Some said his work was too Black. Others claimed it wasn't Black enough. The coded language exposed a deeper issue. He didn't fit into a box executives could easily sell. Independence, confidence, and creative control became liabilities rather than strengths. Off-screen, financial pressure mounted. Alexander and his family faced severe economic struggles, eventually losing their home. He has spoken openly about how quickly success vanished and how unprepared he was for Hollywood's silence. Unlike many stories, addiction or scandal wasn't the cause. The industry simply moved on. Today, Flex Alexander continues working through faith-based projects, independent films, and motivational speaking. His story isn't about failure, it's about how Hollywood often punishes Black actors who challenge the system instead of playing along. Columbus Short. Columbus Short's career didn't fade, it imploded. After breaking out in Stomp the Yard, 2007, which grossed over $75 million worldwide, Short became one of Hollywood's most promising young leading men. He followed that success with This Christmas, and then landed his defining role as Harrison Wright on ABC's hit political thriller, Scandal. Created by Shonda Rhimes, the series made Short a household name almost overnight. For 3 seasons, everything aligned: fame, money, prestige, and critical attention. Then came the unraveling. In 2014, Short's personal life exploded into public view. His wife filed for divorce and a restraining order, alleging threats with a weapon. The same day, ABC fired him from Scandal, abruptly killing off his character. That moment marked the end of his mainstream career. Subsequent arrests, domestic violence charges, and substance abuse issues followed, each incident reinforcing Hollywood's decision to cut ties. Short later admitted to severe cocaine addiction and alcoholism, describing an exhausting cycle of 16-hour workdays followed by self-destruction. Unlike quieter disappearances caused by industry bias, his exit was loud, documented, and relentless. Studios don't gamble on instability, and Short became uninsurable overnight. Attempts at rehabilitation and independent projects came later, but the damage was permanent. His talent was undeniable, but Hollywood rarely offers second chances when legal headlines replace box office potential. Columbus Short's story is a cautionary one. Success without stability can collapse faster than it's built, and the industry rarely waits for recovery. Jalil White. Jalil White became famous in a way few actors ever do, and paid for it just as uniquely. In 1989, a single guest appearance on Family Matters introduced the world to Steve Urkel. The character was meant to appear once. Instead, Urkel became a cultural phenomenon so massive that he consumed the entire series and permanently reshaped White's identity. As the show's popularity exploded through the 1990s, White carried an impossible burden. Playing Urkel required a high-pitched nasal voice, exaggerated posture, and physical comedy that he maintained through puberty. The strain damaged his vocal cords, leaving him with long-term voice issues that required therapy well into adulthood. While audiences laughed, the physical cost accumulated quietly. When Family Matters ended in 1998, White was eager to move forward. But Hollywood couldn't see past the suspenders. Casting directors didn't view him as a leading man, dramatic actor, or romantic interest. Every audition circled back to Urkel. Attempts to rebrand, including the CBS sitcom Grown Ups, failed quickly, reinforcing the industry's narrow perception. White has openly spoken about the psychological toll of being trapped by a childhood role, once expressing extreme frustration with how completely the character overshadowed his real self. Unlike many fallen child stars, addiction or crime wasn't the cause of his disappearance. The issue was typecasting so absolute that it erased opportunity. Today, White works steadily in voice acting, hosting, producing, and selective on-camera roles. His career didn't collapse, it was boxed in. His story remains one of Hollywood's clearest warnings. Fame can become a prison when the industry refuses to let an actor evolve. Orlando Brown. Orlando Brown's fall wasn't subtle. It was tragic and painfully public. Before That's So Raven, Brown was already a seasoned child actor, appearing in Major Pain and Family Matters. But his role as Eddie Thomas on Disney Channel's hit series, 2003 to 2007, made him a teen star with massive visibility and a global fan base. Behind Disney's polished image, Brown struggled. The pressure of child fame, combined with limited roles for young Black actors transitioning into adulthood, created a fragile foundation. When That's So Raven ended, Hollywood quickly distanced itself. His first arrest for marijuana possession signaled deeper instability, and the industry's response was swift silence. Over the following decade, Brown's life unraveled publicly. Arrests for domestic violence, drug possession, probation violations, and threats dominated headlines. Viral videos showed erratic behavior that blurred the line between mental health crisis and spectacle. Instead of support, he became tabloid content, another former child star reduced to cautionary entertainment. Unlike actors who quietly fade away, Brown's struggles were monetized by social media and gossip outlets. Hollywood, which once profited from his talent, offered no safety net. Rehabilitation attempts, including faith-based recovery programs, came after years of damage, far too late to restore a mainstream career. Orlando Brown didn't disappear because audiences stopped caring. He vanished because the system that created him abandoned him the moment he became inconvenient. His story exposes the industry's darkest truth. Child stars are celebrated until they're broken, and discarded once they are. Kadeem Hardison. Kadeem Hardison didn't vanish because of scandal, addiction, or controversy. He disappeared because Hollywood could not imagine him beyond the role that made him famous. As Dwayne Wayne on A Different World, 1987 to 1993, Hardison became a cultural icon. His flip-up glasses, sharp wit, and emotional growth represented a version of black masculinity rarely seen on television at the time. Intelligent, awkward, romantic, and ambitious. The series ran for 6 successful seasons and reshaped how black college life was portrayed on screen. Hardison's character evolved from a socially clumsy freshman into a confident engineer and devoted partner. Audiences grew up with him. Critics praised his range. On paper, this should have launched a long, mainstream career. Instead, Hollywood quietly stalled. Casting directors struggled to separate Hardison from the college campus persona that defined him. Scripts offered after the show ended were often smaller, repetitive, or leaned heavily on the same nerd archetype. Dramatic roles, romantic leads, and major studio projects rarely materialized. Unlike many of his peers, Hardison didn't self-destruct. He continued working steadily in guest appearances, independent films, and later voice acting. He showed up in projects like KC Undercover, Black Monday, an animated series where performance mattered more than image. But the momentum of a leading man career never returned. Hardison's disappearance wasn't loud, it was gradual and systemic. His story reflects a familiar pattern. Black actors allowed to define a generation on television, but denied evolution once the show ends. He didn't lose talent. Hollywood lost interest in seeing him differently. Gary Dourdan. Gary Dourdan reached a level of success most actors never touch, and lost it faster than anyone expected. As Warwick Brown on CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, Dourdan was part of one of the most watched television franchises in history. At its peak, CSI drew over 25 million viewers per episode, turning its cast into global stars. Dourdan's character was intelligent, complex, and emotionally grounded. He wasn't a stereotype, he was a professional black man in a position of authority on a mainstream network drama. The role brought international recognition, financial security, and long-term career stability. Then everything collapsed. In 2008, Dourdan was arrested for possession of heroin, cocaine, ecstasy, and prescription drugs. Months later, his character was written out of CSI and killed off. Without the structure of the show and under the weight of addiction, his life spiraled. More arrests followed, including DUI and probation violations. Each incident further damaged his reputation. Hollywood's response was swift and unforgiving. Casting calls stopped. Studios distanced themselves. The industry that once celebrated him treated him as untouchable. Addiction, rather than being addressed as a health crisis, became a career-ending label. Dourdan has since spoken about homelessness, recovery, and the difficulty of rebuilding without institutional support. While he continues to work in independent projects and music, the mainstream industry never reopened its doors. His story is a brutal reminder. In Hollywood, success is conditional, but forgiveness is rare, especially for black actors battling personal demons. Jurnee Smollett. Jurnee Smollett's absence from Hollywood wasn't the result of scandal or failure. It was the consequence of growing up in an industry that didn't know how to nurture black child prodigies into complex adult stars. By the age of 10, Smollett had already delivered a haunting performance in Eve's Bayou, 1997, earning critical acclaim for emotional depth far beyond her years. Many believe she was destined for a seamless transition into superstardom. That transition never came easily. As Smollett entered her teenage years, roles became increasingly limited and unimaginative. Hollywood struggled to place her outside narrow archetypes, offering fewer meaningful opportunities just as her talent was maturing. Rather than force herself into ill-fitting parts, Smollett made a deliberate decision to step away. She focused on education, attending college and studying literature, gaining the life experience that the industry rarely allows child stars to develop. During her time away, Hollywood quietly moved on. New faces filled the spaces she once occupied. When Smollett returned years later, audiences barely recognized her, not because she had faded, but because she had evolved. Her resurgence came with performances in Underground, Birds of Prey, and most notably HBO's Lovecraft Country, 2020. The role earned her an Emmy nomination and reintroduced her as a formidable dramatic force. The gap in her career wasn't a disappearance, it was preparation. Jurnee Smollett's story challenges the myth that stepping away equals falling off. Sometimes survival means refusing to rush growth in an industry that consumes youth without mercy. Kimberly Elise. Kimberly Elise had everything Hollywood claims to value: range, intelligence, emotional precision, and undeniable presence. Her breakout role in Set It Off, 1996, showcased raw vulnerability and strength, immediately marking her as a serious dramatic actress. That promise deepened with Beloved, 1998, where her performance opposite Oprah Winfrey and Danny Glover was widely praised for its emotional gravity. By all conventional standards, Elise should have become a leading lady. Instead, her career plateaued. Despite consistent critical acclaim, Hollywood rarely entrusted Elise with starring roles. She was often cast in supporting parts: the suffering wife, the moral compass, the grieving figure, characters rich in emotion but limited in agency. While white actresses with comparable performances were rewarded with franchise opportunities and award campaigns, Elise found herself circulating through independent films and secondary roles. The issue was never talent, it was perception. Hollywood seemed unsure how to market a black woman whose appeal wasn't built on spectacle or stereotype. Elise's seriousness became a liability in an industry that prefers easily packaged personas. Over time, leading roles stopped coming, not because audiences rejected her, but because executives failed to imagine her at the center. Yet Elise never disappeared entirely. She continued delivering powerful performances in films like For Colored Girls and The Manchurian Candidate, proving her consistency even as mainstream visibility faded. Her career stands as evidence that excellence alone is not always enough. Sometimes the industry's limitations, not the artists, determine who gets to stay in the spotlight. Michael Jai White. Michael Jai White achieved something historic in 1997. He became the first black actor to portray a major comic book superhero in a big-budget studio film with Spawn. Possessing elite martial arts mastery, a commanding physical presence, and legitimate acting ability, White appeared perfectly positioned to dominate the action genre for years. That domination never came. Despite holding black belts in multiple disciplines and performing his own fight choreography, Hollywood refused to build franchises around him. While less skilled action stars were handed sequels and studio backing, White was quietly pushed to the margins. Spawn's mixed reception became an excuse, not a reason, to withhold further opportunities, even as the superhero genre exploded into the most profitable sector in modern cinema. Rather than disappear completely, White pivoted. He starred in independent action films, earned cult respect for performances in Blood and Bone, Black Dynamite, and Never Back Down 2, and became known as an actor's actor within martial arts circles. His work proved range, comedic timing, and self-awareness, but it existed outside Hollywood's spotlight. The irony is unavoidable. As studios later embraced diverse superheroes and global martial arts cinema, Michael Jai White had already done both, years ahead of the curve. He didn't fail Hollywood. Hollywood failed to recognize what it already had. White's career is a case study in selective investment. Being groundbreaking doesn't guarantee support, especially when the system isn't ready to bet on black leads as long-term action icons. Sanaa Lathan. In the early 2000s, Sanaa Lathan seemed unstoppable. With breakout performances in Love and Basketball, Brown Sugar, and Something New, she embodied a rare combination of warmth, intelligence, and emotional realism. She wasn't just a romantic lead, she was relatable, grounded, and deeply human. Audiences embraced her. Hollywood hesitated. As Lathan entered her 30s, the industry's interest cooled without explanation. The leading roles slowed. Scripts became smaller. The same system that routinely extends romantic careers for white actresses abruptly shifted its focus elsewhere. Ageism and racial bias intersected quietly, without headlines or scandal. Unlike stars who implode publicly, Lathan remained consistent and professional. She transitioned into television with Nip Tuck, The Cleveland Show, and later, The Affair. On stage, she earned a Tony Award nomination, proving her craft extended far beyond film. Still, the mainstream movie roles never fully returned. The disappearance wasn't dramatic, it was subtle. A slow recalibration of visibility that many black actresses experience once they outgrow Hollywood's narrow window of desirability. Lathan didn't lose relevance, she lost access to opportunity. Her career exposes an uncomfortable truth. Talent and audience love do not always protect black women from being phased out. Sometimes the industry simply decides it's time to move on, without ever asking if the audience agrees. Sanaa Lathan didn't fade. Hollywood looked away. Malik Yoba. When New York Undercover premiered in 1994, Malik Yoba made history. As Detective J.C. Williams, he became one of the first black actors to headline a successful network crime drama, attracting millions of viewers and reshaping expectations for primetime television. The show ran 4 seasons on FOX, proving audiences would follow black leads in serious, non-stereotypical roles. Logically, film stardom should have followed. It didn't. After the series ended, Hollywood struggled, or refused, to translate Yoba's television success into long-term opportunities. Film offers were sporadic and often secondary, despite his proven ability to carry complex narratives. While white TV actors frequently transitioned into movies, Yoba found himself cycling through guest appearances and supporting parts, never receiving the industry investment his resume justified. Rather than chase diminishing roles, Yoba diversified. He worked steadily in television, Empire, Alphas, theater, and independent projects. He also became increasingly outspoken about mental health, identity, and social justice, topics Hollywood often prefers its stars avoid. That honesty, while respected publicly, rarely translates into more opportunities behind the scenes. Yoba's disappearance from the spotlight wasn't caused by scandal or decline. It was the result of a system that celebrated him briefly, then failed to build pathways forward. His career exposes how groundbreaking representation can still be treated as disposable once ratings fade. Malik Yoba didn't lose relevance. The industry simply didn't know what to do with a black leading man who already proved the point. Ri'chard. Robert Ri'chard's career highlights a recurring Hollywood problem. Black male actors who peak young are rarely guided into adulthood on screen. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Ri'chard was everywhere, starring in Cousin Skeeter, One-on-One, and films like Light It Up and Coach Carter. He represented a rare archetype: young, intelligent, emotionally expressive, and commercially appealing. Then the call slowed. As Ri'chard aged out of teen roles, Hollywood failed to offer a bridge into mature characters. Unlike white counterparts who routinely evolve from heartthrob to leading man, Ri'chard found himself boxed into the image that made him famous. Scripts either felt regressive or non-existent. He continued working, appearing in television dramas and independent films, but without the momentum needed to sustain mainstream visibility. The industry's reluctance to reintroduce him as an adult performer effectively stalled his career before it could fully develop. Ri'chard has spoken about the difficulty of escaping early branding, a challenge intensified for Black actors whose range is often underestimated. His disappearance wasn't dramatic or controversial. It was quiet, procedural, and familiar. Robert Ri'chard didn't fail to grow. Hollywood failed to grow with him. His story underscores a larger truth. Early success in Black entertainment is not a guarantee of longevity. It's often the beginning of a new kind of struggle. Cree Summer. Cree Summer didn't vanish from Hollywood. She simply became invisible in a way the industry didn't track. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Summer was a standout live-action actress, most memorably as Freddie Brooks on A Different World. Her portrayal of the free-spirited, socially conscious college student offered something rare at the time, a Black woman defined by intellect, individuality, and self-determination rather than stereotype. But Hollywood didn't know what to do with her next. As a mixed-race actress with African-American and Plains Cree heritage, Summer never fit neatly into casting categories. Leading roles were scarce, and the industry seemed uncertain how to market her unique look and voice. Rather than wait for permission, she made a strategic pivot that changed entertainment history. Summer stepped away from on-camera work and quietly became one of the most influential voice actors of all time. Her voice became the soundtrack of multiple generations, from Susie Carmichael on Rugrats to Penny in Inspector Gadget to countless roles across Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Disney. Summer's vocal range reshaped animated storytelling. Unlike live-action Hollywood, voice acting judged performance, not appearance. And in that space, she thrived. While her face faded from mainstream visibility, her influence multiplied. Children who never knew her name still knew her voice. Few performers in entertainment history have shaped popular culture so broadly while remaining largely unseen. Cree Summer's disappearance reveals a deeper truth. Sometimes leaving the spotlight isn't retreat, it's evolution. When Hollywood's limitations became clear, she chose a lane where creativity came first and identity wasn't boxed. She didn't disappear from Hollywood. Hollywood just stopped being the center of her story. Nicole Ari Parker. Nicole Ari Parker entered Hollywood with every quality studios claim to value: intelligence, elegance, range, and undeniable screen presence. Her breakthrough role on Showtime's Soul Food, 2000 to 2004, positioned her as a sophisticated leading woman at a time when Black actresses were rarely allowed complexity on television. The series became a cultural touchstone, and Parker's performance suggested a seamless transition into film stardom. That transition never fully happened. Despite strong audience reception and critical respect, Parker found herself repeatedly confined to television roles. Film offers, when they came, were often supporting parts that failed to capitalize on her depth. While white counterparts moved freely between TV and cinema, Parker encountered an invisible barrier, one that quietly redefined her as small screen only. She continued working steadily, appearing in Boogie Nights, Remember the Titans, and later Chicago PD. And just like that, but mainstream film momentum remained elusive. Hollywood didn't reject her, it simply stopped investing. Behind the scenes, Parker navigated an industry that often struggles to imagine Black women as long-term romantic or dramatic leads outside specific narratives. Her disappearance from blockbuster visibility wasn't due to decline or controversy. It was the result of structural limitations that rarely make headlines. Nicole Ari Parker didn't fade out. she was repositioned, subtly and permanently, by an industry that rewards talent selectively. Karyn Parsons. Karyn Parsons made an unexpected choice that Hollywood still doesn't know how to categorize. As Hilary Banks on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Parsons was part of one of the most influential sitcoms in television history. The role brought global fame, financial security, and a clear path to continued stardom. She walked away anyway. Rather than chase a narrow set of roles offered to black actresses in the 1990s, Parsons made a deliberate exit from mainstream entertainment. She recognized that most opportunities reduced black women to limited archetypes and chose not to build a career within those constraints. Instead, Parsons founded Sweet Blackberry, an educational nonprofit dedicated to teaching children about overlooked black historical figures. Through animated storytelling, the organization introduced young audiences to pioneers like Henry Box Brown and other African-American heroes rarely mentioned in textbooks. Financially, the decision made little sense. Creatively and morally, it made perfect sense to her. Parsons didn't disappear because Hollywood rejected her. She disappeared because she rejected Hollywood's priorities. While her peers competed for diminishing roles, she invested in legacy, education, and cultural preservation. Her story challenges the assumption that visibility equals success. Karyn Parsons chose impact over applause, and in doing so, redefined what it means to leave the spotlight on purpose. Brandon T. Jackson. Brandon T. Jackson entered Hollywood with momentum most young comedians dream of. A sharp stand-up performer from Detroit, he broke through in the mid-2000s with Roll Bounce, 2005, where he balanced humor and heart in a role that suggested true leading man potential. The film became a cult favorite, and Jackson appeared poised for a long, upward trajectory. Instead, Hollywood made a familiar decision for him. Jackson became the go-to comic sidekick. He showed up in major studio films like Tropic Thunder, Percy Jackson, and Big Mamas, Like Father, Like Son, delivering laughs, energy, and scene-stealing moments, but never the center of the story. Each role reinforced the same message: funny, reliable, but not bankable as the lead. While white comedians were routinely elevated from supporting roles to starring vehicles, Jackson remained trapped in the margins. Attempts to diversify his image were met with resistance. Studios seemed unwilling to imagine him carrying emotional weight, romantic storylines, or dramatic arcs, despite his proven ability to connect with audiences. Over time, the offers slowed. Without a breakout leading role to reset his trajectory, Jackson's mainstream visibility faded. He continued performing stand-up and appeared in independent projects, but the momentum of studio films never returned. Brandon T. Jackson didn't disappear because audiences rejected him. He disappeared because Hollywood refused to upgrade him. His career exposes a structural pattern where black comedians are allowed to support success, but rarely permitted to own it. So here's the real question. Did these actors disappear, or did Hollywood decide it was done with them? When black performers refuse stereotypes, age out of narrow roles, or demand depth, the industry often moves on without explanation. But should success depend on silence and compliance? Or does walking away preserve something more valuable than fame? Now it's your turn. Drop a comment and tell us, was this erasure, evolution, or both? Join the conversation, challenge the narrative, and stay locked in with Black Excellence Legends, where forgotten stories finally get told.